The empty chair across from her seemed to mock every unanswered prayer. 3 months of sleepless nights, decisions that felt impossible, and a heart so heavy it physically ached. She had tried everything: sought counsel from friends, read every devotional, even attended extra church services, but the heavens remained brass, her prayers seemingly absorbed into a void of divine silence. That Tuesday morning, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, she saw someone she barely recognized. Dark circles beneath eyes that once sparkled with faith. A woman who used to speak confidently about God's goodness, now questioning if he even heard her name. The breaking point wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, like the final crack in ice before it shatters completely. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to the empty house. But instead of giving up, something stirred within her, a desperate, almost reckless idea. If God felt distant, maybe she needed to remove every distraction between them. Maybe she needed to fast. The first day without food felt more like rebellion than worship. Her stomach growled in protest, while her mind raced with doubt. What if nothing happens? What if I'm just starving myself for nothing? But she pressed on, driven by a desperation that outweighed her fear. By the second day, something shifted. The physical hunger began to pale against a different kind of emptiness, someone she'd been carrying long before this fast began. Memories surfaced like bubbles in still water. The promotion she'd prayed for, but lost to someone less qualified. The relationship that ended with cruel words and silence. The slow, steady erosion of trust in a God who seemed to promise much but deliver little. The third night arrived with a vengeance. Weak and emotionally raw, she collapsed onto her knees beside her bed, not in reverence, but in exhaustion. Her prayers had dissolved into wordless groans, her faith reduced to the simple act of staying on her knees despite every instinct to run. That's when it happened. No burning bush, no audible voice, just a whisper so gentle it could have been her imagination, except it carried a weight that made her entire body tremble. In the deepest chamber of her heart, she heard it clearly. "You've been asking me to change your circumstances. I want to change your heart." The words hit like lightning in reverse, not from sky to earth, but from the depths of her soul upward, illuminating everything. She had been so focused on what God was undoing that she missed what he was trying to do. Her prayers had been demands disguised as requests, her faith contingent on outcomes rather than rooted in relationship. Let go of what you think you need. Trust me with what you actually need. What came next wasn't easy. Through tears that felt like they'd been waiting years to fall, she began to release her grip on the life she'd planned. The career she thought would validate her, the relationship she believed would complete her, the comfortable illusion that faith meant getting what you prayed for. Each surrender felt like a small death, but with each letting go came something unexpected. Room to breathe, permission to trust without controlling the outcome. When she finally broke her fast on the 5th day, the food tasted different. Everything felt different. The problems that had seemed insurmountable were still there, but they no longer defined her. The silence she'd feared had become the space where God's voice was clearest. What came next wasn't easy. Through tears that felt like they'd been waiting years to fall, she began to release her grip on the life she'd planned, the career she thought would validate her, the relationship she believed would complete her, the comfortable illusion that faith meant getting what you pray for. Each surrender felt like a small death, but with each letting go came something unexpected. Room to breathe, permission to trust without controlling the outcome. When she finally broke her fast on the 5th day, the food tasted different. Everything felt different. The problems that had seemed insurmountable were still there, but they no longer defined her. The silence she'd feared had become the space where God's voice was clearest. Perhaps you picked up this story because you recognize that empty chair, that brass heaven, that desperate need for God to speak. Maybe you're tired of prayers that feel like they disappear into nothing, exhausted by faith that seems to demand more than it gives. Her story isn't unique because of what happened, it's powerful because of what it reveals. Sometimes God's greatest gift isn't the answer we're seeking, but the transformation we didn't know we needed. Sometimes his silence is an absence, but invitation on. invitation to go deeper than our circumstances, beyond our understanding, into the mystery of trust itself. The fast wasn't what changed her life. The surrender was the willingness to let God be God, especially when it meant releasing her grip on how she thought her story should unfold. If you're standing at your own crossroads, feeling like your prayers bounce off the ceiling, know this: God isn't distant because he doesn't care. Sometimes he is quiet because he is waiting for us to stop talking long enough to hear what he has been trying to say all along. You don't need to fast for 5 days. You don't need to recreate her experience, but you might need to create space, physical, emotional, spiritual space for God to reach the places in your heart that are too cluttered with your own plans to hear his whisper. The God who met her in that midnight moment of surrender is the same God who sees you now, in whatever silence you're facing. He's not absent. He's not ignoring you. He's simply waiting for you to discover what she learned in those 5 transformative days. Sometimes the answer to our prayers isn't what we expected. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's the very thing our souls have been starving for all along, not the life we planned, but the peace that comes from trusting the one who planned us.